welcome to our PRBI live session today. I'm your host, Tarunjeet Rattan, and today we have Jessica Nuñez joining us from Texas, USA, where she will speak to us about the PR potential in the social audio market. Intrigued? So am I. So let's get started. A little bit about Jessica before I add her on. This PRBI member is the founder and president of TruePoint Communications, a PR and digital marketing agency representing global brands including AT&T, Mary Kay, and World Ventures, among others. Launched in 2006, Jessica has grown TruePoint to be among the top 100 PR agencies in the US market, earning rankings under Best Places to Work 3 consecutive years on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies. Awesome. Jessica has served as a communications advisor for Fortune 500 companies and has been well awarded for her work. So let's add her on and get right to the subject. Hi, Jessica. How are you doing?
Hi, Tarunjeet. I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking out the time to speak to all of us today.
Well, my pleasure. Love the conversation and always love to talk PR, social media.
Awesome. So before we get into the subject, can you help us understand how you got into PR?
Yeah, I've always had a love for communications. And young in my education, I wrote for school newspapers and just had a passion in general for writing and broadcast, and thought I would go into broadcast television. And took a course early on at university and realized that that wasn't going to be the path for me. I talked to another news journalist, broadcast news journalist, and she really advocated for me to consider something else. And so I took a look at public relations and marketing, and more specifically, the integration of the two. And that's where I landed on a career in marketing communications.
Interesting. But while working in PR is something, entrepreneurship in the PR space is just a whole different volume. What was it like? Why did you decide to become a PR entrepreneur?
Well, it's funny. My senior year of college, I told my professor that my goal was to open up an agency. That's what I wanted to do. I had already worked for an agency, had worked 2 agencies and a corporation. And I had a professor who was an agency owner as well. And really one of my favorite professors. I'd gotten to know her so well. And just in that journey, and I come from a bit of an entrepreneurial background. My grandfather is quite an entrepreneur and owns several businesses. And so I just felt like that was going to be my path. And I wanted to try something on my own. He advised that I should definitely go out in the world and get some experience. And so I did, and worked in a wonderful top 3 global consulting firm, and really did get phenomenal experience. And it came to a point in our industry where social media in 2006 was really taking off, and we were seeing blogging starting to take off and grow, and people were trying to understand what to think of it. And I had just decided that I was going to jump into this space, and I had a passion for it and wanted to see how it could evolve. And so at that point, when I left and started my own agency and started an endeavor to identify how we could do integrated marketing communications.
Awesome. So what was your day one like? Was it terrifying? Was it exhilarating? Or did you think that, maybe I shouldn't have done this?
It's a great question. Nobody's asked me that. And as soon as you said it, I could think back to that exact day. I could remember it. It was really exciting. I had a 4-month-old baby. My daughter's almost 15 now. And she was sitting on my lap in just a diaper. And I was filing paperwork, which there in itself describes what it's like to be an agency owner. I had spreadsheets and bills already to pay and paperwork to file. And of course, I had already clients, and I had to serve those clients too.
Right.
So I remember it beginning at that point with the operational side of the business being very heavy.
Awesome. And since then, I think it's been a wonderful journey. I've been reading up on your agency as well. And now you're actually at the forefront of it, looking at social audio markets. I find that subject fascinating. But for the benefit of our viewers, could you help us define what social audio market is? Because I understand it could be known by different names in different countries.
Yeah, well, for the purposes of our conversation, we're talking about social media audio market as the networks that are used for audio broadcasting to communicate and converse with one another. And so Clubhouse is a great example of one, and it's the one that I'm most familiar with and have used most often, but there are dozens of them all over the world that people are using. Depending on the country that you're in, there might be one more popular. And really, Tarunjeet, I like to think of it as, podcasting really took off over the past year. COVID had a lot to do with that. People realized that with a good mic, they could pop open their laptop or their iPhone and they could record on podcasts from right there and share their expertise or their thought leadership on a specific topic.
Right.
Social audio platforms extend those conversations into a live audience. So the difference between the two is with podcasting, you can put your podcast up and distribute it out, but you have to really hope people stumble upon it and find it, or you have to heavily promote it, right? These platforms like Clubhouse give you an opportunity to talk directly to engaged audiences in the moment.
Right.
If you have a podcast, you can tell people about it. You can put it in your bio. You can direct people over to listen to it. But you can really, many of us are talking about how you could skip podcasting altogether and you could just directly host on a social audio platform like Clubhouse. You can schedule a room and every Wednesday at 2:00 go live with your community and create a cadence where they know that you are going to be there to speak about that topic. And it's phenomenal in so many ways because one, in PR, marketing communications, one of the things that we're always trying to do for clients is how do you position that client as the expert in the space, right?
Right.
So often that's a challenge, even for the experts, right? The number one, you've got your number twos and your number threes on your tail. So how do you make sure people know that you really are first to market? You're out there, you're leading. And the best way to do that is to be out there speaking about your topic and owning the conversation. And so by right now, capturing that space, a platform like Clubhouse, setting up a community and directing people there. And for anything, you could start out and just have fun. My friend Jim Nickerson in San Francisco, who's really educated me quite a bit on the social audio market, he is a fan of Bravo, which has in the US, the Real Housewives franchise, so Real Housewives of Orange County, Real Housewives of Dallas, and they're big fans of Bravo in general. He started a Bravo Clubhouse room that has just absolutely taken off with people who also love to talk about the show.
No, absolutely. But Clubhouse is a name that is becoming increasingly popular, and it seems to be leading the charge for this new digital obsession. But what is your global analysis for this medium, right? The Americas versus Europe versus Asia. What is your analysis for it?
So I'm not an expert on the global market for it, to be completely transparent, but what I've seen in the reports that I've read is that it is a early adopter audience. It is, you're seeing it's one where men are actively engaged in this social platform. And the reason that's important is because if you think about other social media platforms that have taken off in the past decade, Instagram, highly female audience. Men are on there, but most men are non-active, or a word we use in our industry is lurkers, which sounds terrible, but they're there to consume the media, not create or contribute to it. And so they're there consuming, and they may have a profile, but they might not be as active, engaging the way women are. We know women shop via Instagram a lot more than men. Not saying that men don't, but we just know women engage in it more actively than men do. Social audio market, we've seen a few different statistics. We see men, and that could be because of the early adopter piece of it. Men tend to be, over the course of technology adoption, men typically tend to adopt faster. So it's still a little early to tell like who will own the market. But I think for brands, as you're considering from a corporate communicator's perspective, is this a market for me? It might be too soon to tell, but what we learned is, do your research, go on as an expert in the field, participate. If you're passionate about a specific category of content, jump in those rooms, start a room, and have conversations, and host or facilitate conversations and get engaged. And then be thinking about, and this is always fun, to write out strategies. What would it look like if we were to take our brand onto Clubhouse or onto another social audio market? Why would we go there? Is our audience there? Are they engaged, right? And going through the planning part of it.
So tell me something, at this point, right? How are you looking at integrating it into PR campaigns, and how do you make a case for it with a brand, that, okay, you need to be on Clubhouse or you need to be on such a similar platform? Because I've seen this over and over again and again. There are very few clients who want to start experimenting or be the first ones. When you take an idea, they will ask you for numbers, back it up with data. And currently there is no data, right? It's just an idea.
Right. Tarunjeet, I completely agree with that approach. I think we've learned, I've been around in social media since Twitter was born and Facebook took off. And the one thing we know about social media is it's the industry of shiny objects, right? So very quickly we can get distracted. And I've seen so many people not be successful at launching strategies because, oh, well, I was doing really good at LinkedIn, but then Clubhouse started and I jumped over there, and that's all I've been doing and figuring it out. And then this opportunity we were doing over here for this executive positioning on LinkedIn just kind of fell by the wayside. Right. And so I'm a big believer in, you're the expert, you're the counselor, get in, start, building up your data, your the knowledge base, and start figuring out, is it really right for the client? And why might that be? And what value would it add to the business goals? Right. And then the marketing goals, right? And the reason why the business goals is because that's where decisions are made. Just because it sounds exciting for marketing doesn't mean it drives value to the bottom line. So what I think is important is that you use that information and you educate your business, your executives, your decision makers, and you say, hey, I want to make sure, one, that you're aware of this is something taking off. You might see your competitors in there. You might see, experts in the field or media who are in there. And here's what's going on, and we're watching it. And here is data that we've seen so far. And here's how we think it might make sense for our brand to be engaged on this social media platform, whether that's Clubhouse or LinkedIn or TikTok or anything really, and give them the data they need. The other thing I think that's often forgotten about are, if you're, depending on the size of your company, what are the HR implications? If you were to take your employees onto Clubhouse and start doing, town halls on there, are there any HR implications of that? And there may not be, but from an employee relations standpoint, thinking about, what implications it might have if you start using that, then encouraging your employees may begin using it. What IT issues it might bring, privacy issues it might bring up, legalities around social media networks. And when we do our full research like that and our full briefing, rather than saying, there's this new platform and we grabbed a handle for you and we're going to start creating content and we're going to push it out there. That's more tactical versus when we do the full depth of data collection, research, and mining, and then the strategy behind it. That's when decision makers can feel like, okay, well, you really vetted everything, and this is something we could consider.
Absolutely, that's very, very valid advice. And I think HR implications are something that not a lot of marketing teams do think of. It's very essential to do that. That's a very good point on it. So any interesting, examples in this field that caught your eye, caught your ear?
Oh, very good. Yeah, because we have to change that with social audio. Interesting examples, I'll have to say, the one that caught my interest the most is in the US, we have Shark Tank. I think there's other versions of it throughout the world, but you guys might be familiar with Shark Tank. And yeah, one day I was in on Clubhouse, and there was a room with the sharks, and that was how it was promoted. And it was several thousand people. I think it was maybe a couple thousand people. It was pretty late at night. It was already about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And it was an extremely active group at 9:30. And some of the sharks were on the East Coast. So it was like 10:30, 11:30 for them. And what really caught me is the transparency of the participants. And I've heard several of the sharks speak before, and they're already very authentic entrepreneurs. Whenever I've heard them speak, they really, I don't feel like they hold back too much. But what I really found was in that moment at 10:30 at night, from their homes, they were being extremely open and authentic. And it was almost like we were in their homes having drinks and just hanging out. And I think that's what struck me as a communicator and as someone who manages reputation, how interesting that was and what potential implications that might have, right? The good in it is they were being very friendly and you felt connected to them. And I gained value. I mean, one of the sharks said they spend 3/4 of their day. I think it was a very high number. I think I totaled up and it was about 8 hours a day that they, so maybe not 3/4, but maybe of waking hours. It was about 8 hours that they spent in social media in some form or fashion. It doesn't mean they were on Clubhouse for 8 hours straight, but it was between everything to manage their brand and to make sure that their brand is out there and they're, being thought about. And we know that, right? We're in social media. We know the importance of that. But that they were doing that and driving that directly when we know they've got people helping them. They've got people creating content for them as well. I'm sure of that, but they really passionately cared about it too.
That's so wonderful to hear. It's when, the top leadership starts taking a keen interest in how the company is promoted or what is being said out there. I think that's when the entire PR marketing campaign gets a new lease of life. But I would like to know from you, what could be the top 3 things or a couple of things that brand marketers can be doing right now on, let's say, Clubhouse?
Yeah, so right now, marketers should be going on and looking at the category of business that they work in most, right? So if you're in tech, if you're in restaurant or retail, being in that space, paying attention and following other participants and joining rooms and being part of the conversation and identifying, what space should you capture? Is there an opportunity to capture the market there early on and build a community, or join into a community that is growing and be a vocal voice to contribute value? And I think that's one of the things with Clubhouse, that is another, and not just for me, but the people I talk to when I say, hey, are you on? Do you use it? One of the things I hear from a lot of people is, I get on, but I just don't get any value. People are talking, right? But they're not delivering value. And so that is one of the things to be watching mindful of as a marketer, that you're not just coming on and spewing a bunch of information out that isn't really driving value to people. So I think the best rooms are really well-moderated rooms that deliver and pay attention to content that people want, not a well-moderated room with a talking head, right? That is, and that's unfortunately what you find a lot of. It's a lot of, there are, like with anything, there's a lot of folks who are just, I'm the best at this, I'm an expert, let me tell you what I did, how great I am, and selling their services. And that doesn't really drive value to a listener. They don't walk away. You want them to walk away with a couple nuggets of value. And so that's one of the really important things I would encourage marketers to do, is when you are getting in this space, making sure that you are delivering value and you're not just popping your clients up that we're on Clubhouse and our client is speaking. And because that's not going to drive value for the client. And they're going to realize that very quickly, that they didn't get any value out of it. And then they're not going to want to continue to participate.
No, absolutely. This is a very interesting question. While for regular networks, we've seen people being very challenged for time, right? Very pressed for time when they're looking at your regular social media networks, offline networking. In this year, probably offline networking will not take up so much of space, but that has pretty much exploded all the online networking events that we go to. And making a judgment on what rooms to join, what chats to join on an audio platform could become another challenge. What would be your best tip, right, for somebody to be able to select the right room for them to be in?
Yeah, I mean, that's really important on Clubhouse, because who you follow, the algorithm is based on who you follow and what kind of content, they care about. So gosh, I mean, so you're asking in the essence of time, how do you encourage people to get in there and get the best content out of it?
Yep.
I mean, Tarunjeet, yes, and that is the best question. That's when I get on there, I scroll through that main hallway, and I don't hit on it unless I know, or I know who I want to listen to. So I go into my followers and I go straight to, and it'll pop up for you if it's people that you follow, if they have something going on. You can add it to your calendar, and your calendar will tell you every time Tarunjeet's on. Great. Tuesdays at 3:00, she's got that Clubhouse. I'm going to jump on that and be part of it because I know there's value in it. And what I love it is when they do a 30-minute in and out, like the power lunch Clubhouse, or a drive. I'm going into the office now, so drive home, kind of, being able to listen to something on the way home. That's how I consume social audio, is when I'm doing something else. If I'm cooking dinner, or I'm on my lunch break, or I'm driving home or driving to the office. And so it's interesting, because as we get back to some normalcy and we get back into routines, it'll be interesting to see if there will be prime time, like drive times, if there will be those kind of like radio had consumption. It'll be interesting if there'll be some shifts in how people consume social audio content.
That'll be an interesting trend to watch, how it integrates with radio, with other social media platforms. I think there will be a shake-up once things return to normal. Yeah,
I think so too. I do too. Yeah. It'll be fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're running out of time. My last couple of questions. How has PRBI been for you? This is a question I have to ask you.
Yes, I love it. Thank you. That's a great question. So PRBI, I've been a member of for several years now, and it's been phenomenal to be among fellow agency owners, and most of who are longtime agency owners. So they've been through a couple cycles of business. They've been through industry changes and trends, and they've weathered those, and they've weathered those really well. And so it's different than any other group that I'm a part of, because it's specific to my challenges and opportunities as an agency owner. And to be able to reach out to somebody on the other side of the world, or in the US on the other side of the coast, it's great to have that fellowship with one another.
Absolutely. I love asking this question because it brings in so many different responses, yet there are so many similarities because there are, some common threads of conversation that all of us share.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel, Tarunjeet, that we can get on the phone and or Zoom or video, whatever now, and we jump on and we can immediately have a conversation with one another that we relate to, and we can be on opposite sides of the world, and whether that's a client situation, an employee situation, or changes in the industry, and how are you adapting? Or during COVID, we had a lot of coffee chats together as an organization or a few at a time. And I found those to be really encouraging. And I also found it to be also really authentic, because we were all really going through difficult times and we were challenged in a big way. And it brought reality to the forefront sometimes when we would talk with one another and be authentic about what we're really dealing with.
Absolutely. That brings me to my last question. Your top advice for PR entrepreneurs this year. I know it's been a challenging year last year, and the challenges are not over yet. There is still a long way to go before things turn back to normal. What would be your advice to PR entrepreneurs for this year?
Yeah, that's a great question, because last year was a year, for those of us who were in it throughout the year, in the sense that, like, we were in our agency, for example, we were pivoting quite a bit. And it was, from COVID to the civil rights, human rights issues that came to the forefront in the US. We had an election in the US, right? So we were, I felt like we were just constantly pivoting and had, one thing after another. And I'd like to probably just encourage that. I think maybe not encourage isn't the right word, but maybe the reality is that is part of this real world that we're in. And these are part of the issues that will continue to come to the forefront. And if you're in communications, you need to be prepared to handle these kinds of situations and accept that this is the industry that we're in, and we are at the center of it, and being able to counsel our clients through it, or counsel our executives through it.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really important to build resiliency to do that. So identify for yourself and for your team, what is it that I need to do or change in order to become more resilient and be able to, thrive long term. Because I don't see it changing.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very good advice, and I think a lot of people will benefit if they take this to heart. Thank you again, Jessica, for taking the time out to share all your insights and share your journey with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tarunjeet. I enjoyed it a lot. You're a great host, and I really appreciate you and your time. Great questions.
Thank you. So that was Jessica speaking to us from Texas, USA, about the social audio market and sharing her amazing journey with us. Get started and get on it today. If you are in communication, you must check it out. Thank you again for joining us today for the session. We will see you again at the next live session with another PRBI member from a different part of the world. Till then, you can view all our live sessions on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. If you have questions for any of our experts or want to know more, then drop us a note in the comment section and we will answer them for you. See you again in the next session.